What's up, guys? It's Cody. In this video, we're talking about how I turned $380 in monthly cash flow into over $2,000 in monthly cash flow. I'm going to tell you about the story of how I took one property that I purchased 6 years ago and am turning it into 4 properties, or rather 4 units, to be able to create this cash flow. Let's start the story off when I bought this townhome. I bought a townhome for my very first purchase. When I got into real estate, it was always a goal of mine to be able to purchase my own place. At a very young age, I said, hey, I want to buy a house. That is something I want to do. I felt like that was kind of the achievement of, being an adult and, accomplishing something in life, I guess, let's say. At a very young age, I decided I want to buy a townhome. I want to go out there and be able to buy my own place. Well, honestly, at the time, I wasn't making very much money. I made about $11.50 an hour. I had a little bit of savings and was really just scraping by. So I went out there, finally found a place. It was not in a great part of town. It was just a townhome. Couldn't afford a single family home, but it worked. I just had to get my feet wet. I knew that if I just jumped in, I would not regret it later on. And, today, man, I'm so glad I did that, because that is what got me into real estate in the first place. I went through that process, made my very first payment on that townhome, and said, oh, wow, making a full mortgage payment by yourself kind of sucks. I need to get some roommates. So I got some roommates the next couple months and then realized, wow, my roommates are actually covering almost my entire mortgage. Maybe I should move back home, rent out my room, and then I'll be able to have monthly cash flow. That's what got all the juices flowing in my head. I figured out, hey, this real estate thing is pretty dang good. If you go through this and you continue to acquire properties, you could be in a position where you could have monthly cash flow that's going to be coming in and satisfying your lifestyle. So I never did end up moving back home. I just stayed there, had the roommates, they paid for the place, and eventually the time came for me to move on to my next property. A couple years later, I did make that move and rented out the room that I was staying in, and now I was making about $250 a month in monthly cash flow. And the great thing about this was that the property was basically self-sustaining. I bought this place in 2014, so that's almost 7 years ago, and I bought the place for $116,900, and it was the best decision I could have ever made. That property over the last 7 years grew to be worth over $280,000. So with this house over the last year or so, I've been thinking, man, I've got this townhome. It's making $380 a month. That's pretty dang good, but I'm not utilizing all of the equity that I have in the property to the level that I could be. I had over $175,000 in equity in this property that was just sitting there. It was locked in. I couldn't do anything with it, and it wasn't earning me the type of return that I needed. I think at like $380 a month, over 12 months, when you factor that on a yearly basis, my return on the equity I had invested in the property or had in the property was only like 2.6%. Now, that's not very good. I'm looking for at least 10 to 12% at the very least. Ideally, something above that would be a slam dunk deal for me. So 2.6, that's just way off the mark. I cannot have that happen. So I started thinking around, started looking at properties, started going out there, and I'm like, man, there's just nothing there. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, needless to say, everything just kind of lined up really perfect for me. I got lucky as my real estate agent career, has continued to progress. I had a client come to me and say, hey, Cody, we want a rental townhome. We need investment. We just need to place some cash somewhere. I said, well, hey, I've got somewhere. If you need, if you can give me a little bit of time to go out and find a different property, I will sell this to you off market at a great deal. So we put this deal together, and it came to be that, I said, I just need flexibility. I'll give you a great deal, but we need to close sometime that I can have the flexibility to find another property, because there's pretty slim pickings out there right now. So we put that in place, and then about a week later, I happened to get a phone call from a fellow investor and real estate agent who's asking me about one of the other properties that I own. Just a couple questions. He noticed that I owned it and had some questions about the rents on it. And I just threw it out to him and said, hey, I'm looking for a rental property, ideally like a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. I want to do a 1031 exchange and roll this over into this new property. And he said, oh, well, you know what? I've got a client who wants to list his property. You might be interested in it. I said, yeah, send me the numbers. I'd love to. So he sends me the numbers, offers a very fair price. Rents are great. The property needs a little bit of love, but I'm up for that. I'm going to have some money from the 1031 exchange to be able to go in there and fix it up. So I say, yeah, you know what? Let's do this. This is awesome. So we put everything in motion. We go through the buying process, go through the selling process on the place I already owned, and get ready to move everything forward. Well, thankfully, About a week later, that agent and investor comes back to me and says, hey, my client actually has this other duplex that he wants to sell as well. Do you have enough money to take down both? And I said, let me think about this. Let me get back to you, because that's going to be a lot of cash that I'm going to need between buying 2 places and a remodel. I'm going to need some cash here. So I looked at the numbers, ran all the estimates, and said, I can make this work. It's going to be a little bit tight, but I can make this work. So I said, yep, let's do it. So I bought both places, or I'm in the process of buying them as of today, but we'll be closing very soon by the time you see this, and was at a spot where it made sense to be able to split up the 1031 money into these 2 different properties. So let's talk a little bit about some of the numbers that we have here. The rents on the very first property, one side is renting for $1,250 per month. The other side that's going to be remodeled, we're going to do a head-to-toe remodel. I'm estimating it's going to cost about $12,000 to $13,000. That unit is going to rent for about $1,500 a month once it's renovated. That brings me a total income of about $2,750, and my payment is going to be about, I think, like $1,500 or so. I don't have the exact numbers. I just have the cash flow numbers, but the exact payment or the exact monthly cash flow for that property is going to be $1,260 for that one property. Now, the other one, the cash flow numbers are not quite as great, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned about that because the property is completely renovated and I'm getting it for under market value. This property is going to bring in about $700 worth of cash flow. So when you add these 2 things up, I'm being a little bit conservative on the numbers here, so that brings me to just under $2,000. I think I might be able to push those rents up and get it over that $2,000 a month mark. That $700 cash flow, I think I can push to $850. The $1,260, I think I could push it up to $1,300, depending on how much I can rent that unit for. So this is exactly how you can use real estate and a 1031 to be able to take a property, own it for a few years, fix it up, and get it to a spot where you've got equity in it, and then roll it into something new that puts out cash flow for you each and every month. The great thing about this is now I've got 2 properties that are 4 units. I've now almost 5x'd my monthly cash flow, and I've got my equity split between 2 different properties that are going to appreciate in value. Together I get the benefit of appreciation in both. I get the benefit of tax benefits on both, and I also have tenants paying down the loans for me on both of those deals. So every single time they make a payment to me, and then I turn around and make the mortgage payment, my net worth is going up by, I don't know what the numbers are, probably somewhere between $1,200 to $1,500 a month just from that every single time we make a payment. So that's another $20,000 to my net worth every single year. So this is the process of taking that 1031 money, how to turn $380 a month in cash flow into over $2,000 a month in cash flow by turning one property into 4 using a 1031 exchange. Guys, I hope this was a helpful story for you to show you some of the powers of real estate and what you can do with it. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And with all that being said, catch you in the next one.